James Gunn wants people to see Superman fighting for truth, justice, and, well, you know the rest of it.
Violence or, sound like I'm promoting.
No offense, but it sounds like some commie gobbledygook.
I mean, why are you here? There must be a reason for you to be here.
Yes, I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
You're gonna end up fighting every elected official in this country.
Ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, the superhero movie has had a rocky road. From the mountaintops of Spider-Man No Way Home to the valleys of the Marvels, Disney's Marvel Universe has begun to slide down the slippery slope of relevancy. And once they've reached the bottom of that pit down there, they saw a former rival and competitor in the form of WB's DC Studios. While Marvel's decline has been a strange roller coaster of highs and lows, DC Studios was just straight off the cliff, with 9 out of their last 10 movies flopping and seemingly any chance of starting their own cinematic universe down on the ground next to them. Less than a week after The Rock's attempted corporate takeover of DC Studios with the film Black Adam,
because the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
What?
It's time for India versus Pakistan.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
it was announced that James Gunn and Peter Safran would head DC Studios into the future. As James Gunn prepared to launch the new DCU, Marvel's decline became very noticeable. And now, in prime position, DC Studios had a chance to take over the superhero genre, so they sent Superman, starring David Corenswet, to the theaters. Superman has been riddled with online debate in the build-up to the movie, with so-called Snyder Bros preying on this movie's downfall. Passionately argued debates from fans between anything from performances to the costumes of the characters has made Twitter a proverbial landmine for anyone with any kind of opinion on Superman. With all the vitriol and build-up to this movie, it felt like it was either going to be a 10 out of 10 success or a complete 0 out of 10 disaster. And after I watched it twice, my honest opinion on this movie is that it's a lot of fun, but it's a mess. And while I like having fun, I do also wish the stories worked in contingents with that fun. So for me, it's more like a 4 or a 5 out of 10. Because while it's being fun, there's still a lot of problems with it. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot to like about this movie, but at the same time, there's also a lot to dislike. In this video, I'm going to try to break down, in my opinion, what was good about this movie and what was bad. Starting off on the positive, I feel like, without a doubt in my mind, the best part of this movie is the cast. Almost everyone, I feel like, plays the character they had to the best of their abilities despite the material they were given. Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor is the standout performance in this movie, and I think he has the best scene in the film, where he straight up shoots a guy in the head in front of David Corenswet's Superman in cold blood. Luthor is a true villain in this movie and just straight up evil, which is honestly a concept that's been missing in a lot of superhero movies over the last few years. David Corenswet, I feel like, embodies what Superman's supposed to be. I think that in a world where we had a better scriptwriter and perhaps a director who actually understood the character of Superman, I think Corenswet would have made an amazing Superman, and I think he still can in a future movie and as the DCU progresses. Even with some of the miswritings I feel like his character has, he does still have his moments in this movie, and you can just see the potential for what David Corenswet can be here in the future. Rachel Brosnahan looks a lot like Lois Lane, and despite the fact that the two characters aren't really together all that much in the movie, there's great chemistry between Brosnahan and Corenswet, and it feels like Lois and Clark. That's the main cast of this movie with those three characters, but the side characters are all also very well cast and portrayed. Some of the highlights are Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, Skylar Gisondo as Jimmy Olsen, Frank Grillo as Rick Flag Sr., and Anthony Kerrigan as Metamorpho. But without a doubt, the best character in this movie is Eddie Gathegy's Mr. Terrific. This movie also does a better job than Man of Steel with how it handles Jonathan Kent or Pa Kent. You can tell this with the message that Pa Kent gives to Clark after Superman's back on the farm about how his actions define who he is. I like this a lot better as opposed to, you know, Kevin Costner saying maybe he should just let them kids die and then getting sucked up by a tornado while Clark doesn't save him. Personally, I like that a little bit better. And speaking of that Kevin Costner Man of Steel scene, the other thing that this movie does really well that I quite like, because it's something that I've pointed out is missing from other superhero movies, is that Superman is always dedicated to actually saving people. We see him save people and animals alike. We see him save a dog, a squirrel, and an old lady, a kid. Superman always wants to save people, except for a couple noticeable exceptions in this movie where they wanted to have a joke and it kind of downplays some of that characterization. But as a whole, Superman's main goal is to actually save lives. A couple of the other things I did like about this movie was the colorfulness and the brightness of every scene. It felt like you were looking at a comic book. It didn't really feel like you were reading a comic book, in my opinion. It felt more like you were kind of just flipping through it and taking the highlighted moments and putting that in a movie. But overall, I did like how that looked. All right, and now some of the bad. So the main issue that I have with this Superman movie is the script, and that's not really a good thing when you're trying to have a good movie. The story has a lot of flaws, but honestly, despite all of that, my biggest issue with the script is it never lets Superman be super. He's just man. Despite the opening of this movie with their title text telling us that the fight with the Hammer of Baravia is the first time Superman has ever lost a battle, we never actually get to see him really win one in this movie, outside of when he defeats all of those raptors with laser vision at the end, and kind of at the end where he throws Ultraman in front of a bus that sucks him into a black hole. But at the end of the day, he's kind of getting his ass kicked through most of this movie. He gets kicked in the balls at one point, and he never actually wins a fight. And I think this movie would have benefited a lot from having the first half of this movie, maybe, where he's being Superman, he's winning these fights, he's kind of dominating his opposition, if you will, and then we get introduced to Ultraman or the Hammer of Baravia, however you want to do it, or Kryptonite, and that shows how weak Superman is to this thing and that he can in fact be beat. I feel like this handling of the character of Superman kind of shows James Gunn never really understood the character. We heard in build up to the movie, James Gunn said that he couldn't crack the character of Superman. He was offered this movie back in 2018 and didn't take it, and it wasn't until he thought of the concept of Krypto being in this movie that he finally cracked Superman. He never actually really cracked Superman, and I still don't quite think he understands the character, but we'll get into that here in a second. So what's the main complaint that people who don't actually know anything about Superman always have when they talk about Superman, or they say he's boring? It's because they say he's too powerful. He has all the superpowers and he can't be beat if you don't have kryptonite, but kryptonite's rare. So he's just a boring character because there's never stakes in his fight. Partially, to me, that's what makes the concept of kryptonite, or when you get a character like Zod or Bizarro who actually can put up a fight with Superman, that's what makes it so interesting. You're expecting Superman to be this untouchable god level being, and so when there's finally something that's able to beat him, it's like that moment in Avengers Infinity War when Tony Stark draws a drop of blood from Thanos, and while to Thanos it's a victory, it's like he can bleed. He is still a being that can be defeated, and I really like when those elements in the comics show Superman's vulnerability and it causes the character to kind of have some problems and an internal fight over how to deal with those things. And I think that this movie wanted to have those moments with Ultraman and with Kryptonite, but because we never actually see him win, it doesn't ever get that effect on the audience himself. If Superman appears as the invincible Man of Steel that he is in the comics, and then Kryptonite weakens him and shows he can be beat, it provides shock and adds stakes to his fight scenes in the movie. This is where this kind of miswriting of Superman becomes apparent in this movie, in my opinion. I think another major misstep in showing James Gunn doesn't quite understand the character is how little presence Superman commands when he's on the scene in moments. Like, for example, the Justice Gang, who's a bunch of fellow superheroes, they don't really seem to respect him. They kind of think he's lame. They think that he's that Boy Scout quality, right? He's saying he doesn't want to kill the kaiju. He wants to capture it and take it somewhere safely. And the Justice Gang are like, Mr. Terrific rolls his eyes. He's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me with this Boy Scout stuff, Clark. And then they just ignore him, and then there's no consequences for it, right? So he doesn't command the presence you would expect from Superman when he shows up. Same with kind of Lex and Lex's like raptor henchmen kind of things. They don't really ever seem intimidated by the fact that Superman should be a god level being, and more that they're like trying to goad him into making a mistake, which is something that you would think would at least require a bit of hesitancy from these characters than they have in the movie. So, as much as I like Mr. Terrific, like I said, he's my favorite character in the movie, and I think he's probably the best written and is kind of the most interesting, and he has one of the better fight scenes, although it's a little weird. We'll get to that later. It does suck to me that it's Mr. Terrific who's my favorite character in the Superman movie, and that one of my least favorite characters in the Superman movie is Superman, and I feel like he was written wrong, and I wish that there had been more focus on making a good Superman movie instead of trying to establish this universe around. If you had focused on a good Superman movie, it lays the groundwork for that universe. That can be seen with Iron Man, right? Iron Man is a good Iron Man movie, and it still, because it's a good movie, establishes the groundwork of what what can be the future. My next big gripe, and it seems like a very negative decision that was made on this movie based on a lot of people's opinion, is Bradley Cooper's character of Jor-El and how they ruined him in this movie. Of course, once the second half of the Superman Codex message is revealed in this movie, Jor-El and Lara tell Kal-El that he should rule with an iron fist and rule without mercy and take a secret harem of wives to spread his Kryptonian seed. This is really a complete disgrace in my opinion. And it's not necessarily a disgrace because I don't think you can do that with the character of Jor-El. I really don't think you should do that with the character of Jor-El, but it's one thing if it adds something to the movie, whereas in the case of this film, it was more used as a chance for a joke. The secret harem joke is all over this movie. It's the monkeys tweeting it, the Baravian president makes a weird joke about it. It's constant, and it's like, if you're going to assassinate your character of Jor-El, which, okay, I don't think you should do, but let's say you want to create a plot for it. It doesn't work if it only is ever really used in the context of the joke. They try to use it a bit with Superman's story arc, if you want to call it that, but it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't actually provide a controversial question, right? The superhero doesn't have to make a difficult decision. He's left with the choice of, okay, do I listen to what the earthly parents who raised me say, which is I should be a good person and these are the values I was raised on, or do I listen to my parents who are telling me to become a supreme dictator, right? It's a simple decision for someone who is good-natured, as we've been shown in this movie Clark is. So it's not like it's a complex choice that he's left with of weighing the values of either option, the pros and the cons, and he has to choose one. It's a simple, dumb decision that was a waste of a character in Jor-El to create a joke for the movie. And that is what the disgrace is to me. And I don't care when people are saying like, well, you gotta stop freaking out, it's gonna be fixed in the next movie, they're probably gonna retcon it and they're probably gonna change it. Okay, that doesn't matter to me because it's not this movie. And the argument that it's dumb because it's supposed to be dumb isn't a good argument, all right? It's bad in this movie, and it doesn't matter to me if they're going to fix it in 3 years with Superman 2, or even if they fix it in a year with Supergirl. This is the destruction of a character for the sake of a joke, and that's what makes it a problem to me. It's not, like I said, that they made this decision. It's that they made this decision just for a joke. And you still could have gotten the same desired effect if this message had been fake, like it felt like it was going to be in this movie. The movie makes sure a numerous amount of times to tell you that it is in fact real. We hear it from characters who you can trust and you can't trust, but every character makes sure to tell Clark this is real, or Lex tells his partner in crime it's real, that no one has said it's a fake, and even James Gunn himself seems to have clarified that it was in fact real, right? So what James Gunn got right with Jonathan Kent, he got very wrong with Jor-El. It's almost a complete opposite of Zack Snyder, who, in my opinion, royally screwed up with Jonathan Kent in The Man of Steel. But the Kryptonian stuff is simply amazing, right? I mean, the legendary Russell Crowe scene with the famous line,
"You can save a cow. You can save all of them."
And as far as a comics argument of this, I know a lot of people always like to say, well, it's in the comics, so the closest thing that I know of in the comics of Jor-El or Lara mentioning that he should rule over the Earth comes from the legendary John Byrne Man of Steel run, which conveniently I actually read in the build-up to Superman because I heard it was a great tale of how to understand the character of Superman. I agree, and I think you should read at least volume 1 of John Byrne's Man of Steel. It's a lot of comics. It compiles a lot of the adventures from the 80s, but it's not really a mandate delivered to him by Lara or Jor-El. They debate it, right? When Jor-El shows Lara in this comic what Earth is like, she says, oh, he can rule over them, and he says maybe, or he can grow alongside them. And it's not really a debate. It's mentioned in passing, but it's never like Lara or Jor-El saying, yes, he is the true powerful human in this scenario. He would dominate the humans because of the yellow sun. They send him to Earth because the yellow sun would make him powerful, but they don't necessarily say that he needs to rule over it, and especially not with an iron fist or to take many wives. It is clear that by the end of the movie, they did this to show Superman accepting his human side and the human way. In my opinion, I think that's a bad decision because both of Superman's parents kind of have a massive impact on who he becomes, and that's something that no movie has gotten right really since the 78 scene. I think Man of Steel does it closely. This movie fails miserably at it, obviously, where it does have Jor-El telling him that he can help Earth, but then it immediately says that he can help it by ruling it. So it kind of ruins any influence that Jor-El has over how Clark should be saving lives on Earth. While I think they did the Jonathan Kent stuff great, Man of Steel did do the Jor-El stuff great as well. So I wish that this movie had managed to be better and get both sets of parents right, because like I said, they both have a massive effect on who Superman becomes, and I hate that they did this with Jor-El. I also don't like Krypto.
You need to leave!
Okay, I said it. I don't like Krypto. I think that he's kind of just in this movie for a cheap laugh from time to time. He's there to draw the oohs and the ahs from the kids who are in the audience or the families. And I actually feel like Krypto ruins multiple scenes in this movie. I feel like the main one is at the end where Superman and Lex are arguing over their different philosophies, essentially. And Superman lectures to Lex about the validity of the human way, and Lex gets up to yell at him, and he says, I was paid to kill you, if not today, then someday in the future. And it looks like it's gonna be a great moment to establish this rivalry between Lex Luthor and Superman isn't ever gonna end, and it's something that's destined to go on for decades to come. But we don't get that because Krypto then jumps in, and we get a worse version of the Hulk flapping Loki around. And because this really should have killed Lex Luthor, to be honest, I mean, Krypto is a massively powerful dog, so flinging him around like this should probably do a little more damage to Lex than it does. But to me, that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that it kind of cuts this scene off and ruins a great moment for a cheap joke. A couple of the more meta things I don't like about this movie are the cinematography and the score. This movie's cinematography was done by the same cinematographer of The Flash, and it shows for sure. I've never sat through a movie in a normal showing and an IMAX showing and wished that I hadn't seen it in IMAX. I've never thought that IMAX looked worse than a normal version of the movie until I watched Superman. I honestly started to feel a little sick to my stomach watching it, and I'm not someone who really gets motion sickness that easily. The blurry action is so hard to follow, and the fisheye camera makes the flying scenes look real weird sometimes, and it kind of makes Corn Sweat look a little derpy with how the fisheye lens makes his head look huge and his eye like drift off, and it's all amplified mixed with the blurriness. I just don't like it. Camera work also ruins that Mr. Terrific fight scene from earlier. It's kind of a cool twist on it with the camera spinning around Lois, but I don't really like it. I kind of wish I could just see Mr. Terrific fling around. I like the music that's playing, and I like that this fight's happening, but with Lois just taking up so much of the screen, you can't tell that well what's happening in the fight, and it ruins this good moment for the best character in this movie. The score of this movie, now I'm talking about score, I'm talking about the instrumental. I actually like the soundtrack with the vocalized music. All of those are very good, which I expected from James Gunn. He obviously did that with Guardians of the Galaxy, but the individual score itself sucks. There is no original score. The only moments the score is good is when it's John Williams' legendary theme from the original Superman movie, and this is obviously amazing. But it's the only time you actually ever really notice the music that's happening in the scene, and the music amplifies the scene. The only other song that I actually liked on this score was the one called LexCorp that plays during early moments when they visit Luthor Corps and on the beach after the Hammer of Baravia defeats Superman. I liked this as a good bad guy theme, but I don't think it ever came back up, and that kind of annoyed me a bit because it was the only other music that I even really noticed was in this movie. This movie also suffers from a problem that a lot of modern Marvel movies seem to suffer from, where they do a really bad job of letting moments sit. I already mentioned that Lex and Superman scene that Krypto interrupts for a cheap joke. We get one moment in this movie where they do let it sit on a serious moment after Lois and Clark have their very long 10-minute argument in the opening of this movie. The next most powerful moment between the two of them, and really the last time it feels like we get anything between Lois and Clark, is after the message is revealed and Clark is talking with Lois in a very emotional and well acted scene. They couldn't let it sit, and there's a fight going on with a dimensional imp going on in the background where the Justice Gang is fighting, and it's used as a joke to keep the scene from getting too serious, and it causes a bit of a weird narrative question of, we saw with the kaiju fight that the Justice Gang don't really seem to care all that much about civilian casualties. They were fully willing to let the kaiju drop on top of the civilians, and Superman was the one saving them. So why now is Clark all of a sudden okay with this idea that the Justice Gang can fight this thing and lives won't be at risk? I don't like that, and I think it doesn't even line up with this version of Superman, let alone any version of Superman. Now, there's one thing I want to talk about, because this movie's been received pretty positively online, and that's awesome. I love that superhero movies can be positive. The box office has done about what was expected, I think, in the opening weekend domestically. Internationally, it has been a bit of a disaster for them. It didn't break 100 million internationally in the first weekend, which isn't great. A lot of these big billion-dollar superhero blockbusters get a lot of that money internationally. People have seemed to enjoy this movie, which is awesome. Like I said, I know a lot of people who say this movie's awesome and they have a lot of fun. And that's great. I had fun too. And I don't have a problem with people having fun. I don't want to come off sounding like I'm the fun police and I'm saying you can't have fun in a movie. You got to take it seriously and everything is important. Obviously, I don't think that's the case. But a lot of people are saying that this is the greatest superhero movie of all time, or it's the best one in years. And the story is a narrative mess. It's all right to have fun in a movie, and this movie has its fun moments, but I wish it didn't have to come at expense of a good story. This is an excuse that gets thrown around with like the new Jurassic World movies, where it's like, well, you're just supposed to watch dinosaurs kill people. You can't just turn your brain off and watch dinosaurs eat people. And it's like, okay, but Jurassic Park did that without expensing the story. The original Jurassic Park. Old movies did this without expensing Jurassic Park. It's a comic book movie, man. You just gotta, you can't take it too seriously. It's comic books. Okay, well, comic books have dumb moments, but they're not stupid. They still tell important, impactful stories. Even, especially Superman comics, those always have important impact and are cultural phenomenon for that reason. Comic book movies don't have to be ridiculous. They can have fun while telling a great story. Look at any superhero movie from the early Marvel days. Iron Man, Captain America the First Avenger, Spider-Man 2. The Dark Knight doesn't have a lot of fun, but obviously The Dark Knight is one of the best stories out there with a comic book movie. Just because these stories are comic book based doesn't mean the stories have to suck and it's gotta be funny. It's fun when a movie's funny. Even James Gunn himself has done this. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 is very funny and has a lot of fun, lighthearted moments, but the story isn't sacrificed. In this movie, the story has no real flow. It moves at 1,000,000 miles per hour, and that's what causes it to be a little rough at times. And it leaves with so many plot holes and questions where it could be called like, oh, you're just nitpicking, but it's like they are big things in the grand scheme, especially when you're trying to establish a universe. I'll go into a few here in a second. You don't have to agree with everything, and we don't have to agree on anything, really. We can all have different opinions on the Superman movie. But just a couple of the plot holes that come up are, if Lex is able to clone Superman into Ultraman, why did he only do it once? He said it was pretty easy. Why doesn't he just have 5 Ultramans? Why doesn't he have 5 engineers if he can just infuse nanotech into their blood? We saw Superman barely win a fight with 1 engineer and 1 Ultraman. Imagine if there were 2 engineers and 2 Ultraman. He would get destroyed. If Lex can create these pocket universes that can't be opened from the inside, why doesn't he just go, hey, Superman, I want to show you something, and then shove him into the pocket universe and close it forever, and then you never have to deal with Superman? Once Lex has Superman in the pocket universe, why doesn't he kill him? He says it's because the government wants to question him. Okay, sure, so we'll leave him alive for that case. But why doesn't he kill him earlier in the movie? He clearly can get into the Fortress of Solitude, and he has access to kryptonite, so why doesn't he just go in there and kill him? Because you can't say he needs an actual mandate from the government to kill him, because he's done illegal stuff in order to draw out this quote-unquote mandate anyway. He could have gone to the Fortress of Solitude that no one knows exists at this point and just kill him and let him sit there dead, and no one would ever find out that Lex had anything to do with it. If Superman interfering with this conflict in Baravia and Jarhampur is such a big deal, where Superman is representing nothing, how is it that a corporately funded team of superheroes in the Justice Gang can go to Jarhampur and just straight up murder people? I mean, Hawk Girl literally kills a sitting world leader. I understand the president or whatever, dictator of Baravia, is a total piece of crap. I get that. You still can't just have the dude executed. It's probably a war crime on top of a lot of things, but it was such a big deal when Superman did it. Why is it now it's a good thing and it's no longer an incident? Like I already touched on earlier, after the kaiju fight, why is Superman now suddenly okay with the Justice Gang fighting stuff on their own when they clearly don't care about civilian casualties? Why in the world does Lex Luthor need to play Mortal Kombat in order to beat Superman? And you're telling me Superman, the man who's faster than a speeding bullet, can't attack faster than Lex can yell out a command to his goons, and then the goons input it into their little computer, and then Ultraman does the move before Superman can do something? That doesn't make any sense. Why is it when Metamorpho is creating the sun to heal Superman that the guard who's watching his child doesn't do anything? You can say these are minor plot holes, and that's fine, but they do create a narrative problem, and when this movie can't piece them together, it could cause major falling pits for the DCU as it goes forward. Like I said, you can have all the fun in the world you want with this movie. That doesn't mean it's a good movie. It's like John Wick 3, or really any John Wick movie. The story in the John Wick movie makes no sense. The dude is made of titanium or adamant, like this dude's Wolverine, but there's still a lot of fun. But I'm not gonna sit here and say John Wick is one of the greatest movies ever made, but it's some of the most fun you have watching a movie. So I don't have a problem with people having fun or even saying it's a 7 out of 10. For me, it can't be a 7 out of 10 because I think it has to do more good than bad, and I think the bad far outweighs the good, so it can't be above a 5 out of 10. For me, I do think it's right around a 4 out of 10 because that there is more bad than good. In conclusion, this is a movie by James Gunn about a character that he never really understood. James Gunn's talent has always been about bringing light to superheroes who are very unknown, or characters who are on the sideline that people don't understand. Is what succeeded about Guardians of the Galaxy. They were fringe characters who were brought into the mainstream by James Gunn. You can see it with the Suicide Squad. And you can tell in this movie because the characters James Gunn was most comfortable with writing were characters like Mr. Terrific. It's these side characters that aren't the main guy. In a world where we get a team of writers and a director who understands the character of Superman, I think Superman 2 could be amazing. And I think the DCU can be amazing. Unfortunately, if there's one thing that WB has proven time and time again, it's that whatever the stupidest, dumbest decision that they can make as a studio that will lose them the most amount of money is, they will make that decision 100 times over. A lot of people love this movie. A lot of people hate this movie. And a lot of people, like me, think it's just kind of meh. Truth is, we don't have to agree. And that's fine. You can disagree from me. I can disagree from you. Guess what? The world will still be spinning. We'll wake up the next day, and who knows what'll happen next. To decide whether you like this movie or not, you shouldn't listen to me. You shouldn't listen to anyone and read their opinion and go, well, now I'm going to like this movie. No, you should maybe watch this video and understand where I think the problems are and decide for yourself whether you like this movie or not. The only recommendation I will make is if you're prone to get motion sick, do not watch this in IMAX. It might make you sick. Thanks for watching. Oh, also a quick note, if you have any interest at all in wanting to watch me play video games or just yap about stuff on a live stream, I started up a live channel. You can go check it out. The Final Take Live, links in the description. I'm also live on twitch.tv/GingerCaleb. You can listen to Subjectively Correct. Link, there's a playlist in my description. It's my podcast with Rants and Reviews with Jake. We have a full instant reaction to Superman right when we got home from the theater. You can hear some of my thoughts in a more drawn out and waste of time format there. But yeah, thanks.